Switch emulator makers agree to pay $2.4 million to settle Nintendo lawsuit. Yuzu devs shut down emulator they now say is primarily designed to break DRM. In a series of filings posted by the court Monday, the Yuzu developers agreed to pay $2.4 million in monetary relief and to cease offering to the public, providing marketing, advertising, promoting, selling, testing, hosting, cloning, distributing, or otherwise trafficking in Yuzu or any source code. Apparently, Tears of the Kingdom got like 1 million pirate downloads. This isn't really surprising. I feel like Nintendo actually has a pretty strong legal ground for this. This isn't an emulator that's doing emulation for some like old system or whatever. Yuzu and its team have always been against piracy. We started the project in good faith, had a passion for Nintendo and its consoles and its games, not intending to cause harm. But we see now our projects can circumvent Nintendo's technological protection measures and allow users to play games outside of authorized hardware. Oh, they had to write this with gritted teeth. My God. My God. Yuzu had a Patreon and they locked fixes for some games behind Patreon tiers. Nintendo does some bad shit, and I don't want to defend them as a company, but I also don't... this isn't really surprising to me. Like, it's legal to emulate current consoles. The first emulator was for a current console and stood through trial, only folding because of legal issues. The first emulator ever? Most emulator devs state don't use this for piracy, blah, blah, blah. Is that not legally defensible? This is Japanese law, right? We're talking about different legal systems. I don't know. Bullsh emulation is legal precedent for all of this. The Patreon was dumb, but emulation is perfectly legal, and Nintendo would have lost, but Nintendo has infinite money and would just draw the lawsuit on forever. I'm not going to speak on the law issue because I don't know anything about it. I guess I could just... the whole point of, like, Nintendo selling Nintendo games through Nintendo systems specifically is that they have complete control over the legitimacy of those games. So if you're producing an emulator that can run just ROMs of those games... you're opening up a market for emulation that didn't exist previously, and something that Nintendo works very hard to prevent, which is why they're so big on first-party stuff and keeping everything on hardware and that kind of stuff. I can understand there being, like, a legal issue here. I guess I just don't really know what it would be. I don't know. Nintendo's pretty bad, so maybe I should just be against them on principle. Nintendo itself uses emulation. Well, yeah, but that's not really an issue here, because they're using emulation for their games on their devices. Bullsh, look up the history of the IBM-compatible PC. Why would I do that? Why would I... What do you think I'm just... Oh, just mid-stream? Let me just look up the history of the IBM-compatible PC. There are probably, like, textbooks on it. The precedent of this goes back decades, even though this is obviously a joke if you oppose the principle of hardware runtime closed systems. Basically, I don't know what you're talking about. So it's just a regular settlement. I want to know more. The emulator required you get signed keys or something from a real Switch, and if you didn't, it wouldn't work. You could, of course, get it through means without having a real Switch, but still. I guess, thinking about it, everything should be like the computer. Everything should be open source, right? So what Nintendo does, which is keep a massive lock on everything with vertical integration, so you build the device, and then you build the games that go into the device, and then, like, you control everything. That's bad. It's anti-art and anti-life. And it would be good if everything Nintendo did could be incorporated really, really easily into just regular computer stuff the way that everything else is. Like, a computer can easily emulate, you know, older consoles, and in a lot of cases, that's the only way to play older games, because you just can't get some dusty old Dreamcast or SNES or whatever. You know, otherwise that art disappears. Really important cultural stuff just fades away into nothing. It's not like a book where you can just, like, you know, find the book or whatever, or even a movie. Like, a lot of early movies were lost, but nowadays we have a pretty decent handle on, like, oh, a movie exists? Okay, well, there you go. It's like, there's a file for it. Here's a DVD, whatever. But even then, a lot of stuff is getting lost on streaming services, you know? Like, for a while, it wasn't actually possible for me to find Fooly Cooly, my favorite anime. I wanted to watch it, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, and they had removed it from Netflix, which was the place it was available beforehand, and it just was not available for a while. Obviously, I found it anyway, but if you were really interested in, like, having it, you know, it's like, yeah, old games on the emulator. It's impossible to watch the entire Pokemon anime without piracy. Man, that's so fucked up. It's really dumb. It's really stupid. You can just hold everything in a file. But the whole point for Nintendo of putting everything on their own, like, proprietary technology is so that you can't do that, because they want to maintain massive control over it at every level. I can understand there being some I can understand there being some argument to this. The idea of like whether or not you think Nintendo is an evil company, you should have to pay money to play like Tears of the Kingdom because Tears of the Kingdom is a large piece of art, you know, it costs money to make, like pay up, face, whatever. And then if you make something like this where you can just pirate it, it's like, okay, well, everyone's just going to pirate it if they can. And the thing that prevents people from pirating it is the fact that it's inconvenient for them to find out how to do so, or there are like anti-pirating measures. And Nintendo avoids all of this by just having a really strong lockdown on their machines anyway, you know? So how do you prevent pirating for mainstream games? How do you prevent pirating for games that are really popular on the computer, like, say, Grand Theft Auto 5? Grand Theft Auto 5 probably got pirated a bunch, but people also bought it. There are a couple of philosophies to this, you know? I guess... How much does piracy affect computer game sales? For example, a study found a 34% displacement rate for distributors and producers. God help me. Producers, indicating a significant impact on sales. Moreover, the willingness to pay among consumers engaging in piracy is typically low. Okay, wait, hold on. The displacement rate refers to proportion of sales lost to piracy. Wait, how are you determining that? Just because a person pirates something doesn't mean they would have bought it otherwise. The findings were telling. Nearly 90% of these studies identified a statistically significant negative impact of piracy on sales. Okay, so how do they do that? Like, because just because a person pirates doesn't mean they would have bought it at the actual game's price. Oh God, there's a bunch of disagreement on this. Huge margin of error. A 45% error margin. What the fuck? How is that even statistically significant? Your margin of error is like the entire range of possible data. Okay, how is that even worth reporting on? Yes, video game piracy is bad for players. Piracy will always exist, but when it goes mainstream, everyone loses out. 20 million illegal downloads does not mean 20 million lost sales, but it does mean some lost sales. Doesn't sound... The firm estimates that just 1.7% of illegal downloads would have resulted in a sale. Okay, well, if that's the truth, then piracy is basically not an issue. Like, sorry, 1.7% of illegal downloads would have resulted in a sale. Like, that's a very, very minimal issue. It would be so nice if games weren't almost $100. Now, games should be more expensive, not less. Games were $60 back when we were buying, like, little Nintendo 64 cartridges. Nowadays, games cost like 50 million times as much to make. And then for some reason, they cost the same amount to buy them. I think the main issue with like game sales, how much they cost, and like consumer consumption of them is the fact that a lot of people don't really give a about the media they buy anymore. When people used to buy games, that was like a big deal. It was like, I heard about this game and I saw a newspaper magazine article, like pumping it up. And oh man, it costs a lot, but I can't wait to go home and play it. But like nowadays, people just buy a bunch of games, whatever, just cycle through them, da-da-da-da. I feel like, I don't know, one of the reasons why microtransactions is are such a big deal these days, you know? New study came out revealing that pirates are the ones who actually drive up sales. Pirates tend to be the biggest buyers of legal content. Yeah, I don't want to like... I'm not trying to gas them up too much because a lot of people are just cheapskates, but I do think a lot of people who pirate media will actually end up buying it if they like it. Maybe not a majority of them, like 51%, but it may be like... Because there is a version of this where there will be developers who will have like a pay-what-you-want thing, and people will often pay quite a lot if they feel like they're tipping out of goodwill and not just buying it as a cost to entry. I don't know how much of a percent of people that is, though. Like, probably not a huge percent. But there is an underlying logic there, right? Like, not every act of piracy is a total avoidance of wanting to pay. Make demos great again? Yeah, demos used to be a bigger thing than they are now. They call them early access now and make you pay for them. Yeah, early access is shit. Early access is like conceptually okay, but demos are obviously better. A lot of games never leave early access. For one, you have to pay to play early access. People just stay in them for years and years and years. I think a demo is a lot better as like a way of getting people's foot in the door, you know? Do demos even exist anymore? Sometimes you can find them, but like for the most part, it's pretty uncommon, yeah. Y'all are just nostalgia coping? I don't think so. Also, you have a 2-hour refund window on Steam. That's a demo. That's not really the same as a demo, though. A demo is like a cut together, like, exhibition of the game. Like that's not the same at all. That's a refund. It's also 2 hours isn't really enough for a demo in a lot of cases. Man, people used to spend so much time on demos. This goes way back, like back before I was even alive. But when Doom first released, they advertised it in part by having a demo that came in CDs in like cereal boxes or whatever, or like magazines, and people would have the demo disc, and people would like speed run that shit like early on. You know, they were really, really, really into it, and you'd have to like call a phone code to activate the full game. Those are the days. They were floppy disk. Oh yeah, sorry, they weren't even CDs. They were floppy disks. My apologies. Yeah, they weren't even. It was that far back. Demos are mostly an indie thing these days. Yeah, yeah. Well, the indie game scene is just better in general than the mainstream game scene. You know, like that's not me being pretentious. Seriously, mainstream gaming right now is dog shit, and everyone agrees now. Like, I feel like I've been saying this back since at least 2011, but I feel like now everyone agrees basically. Like you look at the state of the AAA gaming industry, and it's like, wow, that is dog shit. You know. Except from, well, of course there are some studios that do well. I'm talking about like the broader, yeah. Steam is the highest profit margin per employee than any other company in the country. Well, it must be easy considering all they do is leech money from other developers and don't actually produce anything themselves. Must be really nice making money when the Steam menu is like 67 different eras of menus jumbled together and it's barely usable in its interface, and you just skim money off the top of actual creatives doing actual work. Thanks, Steam. People give Epic Games so much shit, but like, holy, they have, like, Steam is so bad. Yeah, they used to make games, now they make money. Turns out, as is the case with many such cases in post-industrialized capitalism, the best way to make money is not, in fact, to do or produce anything, but rather to skim wealth off of people who do. Huh. GOG is pretty good. GOG is, like, head and shoulders above Steam and Epic Games. Yeah. GOG and itch.io are the two, like, titans of fantastic game stores, but they don't produce a bunch of like AAA stuff, you know? What's GOG? Really? You can find a lot of DRM-free games there. Sometimes modern stuff, usually older stuff, but it's very good. What does IS stand for? Itch. ITCH.io. It's got a bunch of mini games. Well, they're a real game. I'm sorry. Pardon my chauvinism. Pardon me talking down to indie game developers, okay? Miniature games are not real games.